So it isn't you, is it? This was missing from the newspaper shelf at the outlet. And it seems that the outlet, which is part of a very big British supermarket, has been allowing a negligent attitude to shelving. This is not inside the paper, which is supposed to be the Mail on Sunday. And this is not necessarily visible next to it, because next to it is another paper, or it is surrounded by other papers, not the Mail on Sunday. And the promotional statement about her, Felicity Jones, needs answering anyway. That's the promotional statement. And the answer is, quote, white. It says, how did a Brahmi kid, Brahmi meaning Birmingham in England, UK, with a bowl cut become a Hollywood favorite? And the answer is because she is white. And this program is called World Exclusive Diagnosis of Fleet Street. And that's the diagnosis of the Mail on Sunday's stupidity, racist denial, and stupidity. It's the trial of K.R. Starmer at the Snaresborough Crown Court that was fronted by Afsana Begum playing the defendant. The trial went the way it did because Starmer needed saving. And here is an admission on the Guardian Observer, which is very much a supporter of the liar Keir Starmer. It says, or it peddles him through his aide as if she's speaking for herself. She's not. She's speaking for Starmer. And the short quote on the front page of the Observer is, we've lost touch with target voters. Well, that gives away the game of the dead party. Target voters should not be there. There should be the many, the voters. There shouldn't be a division between target and non-target. So we are diagnosing the sickness of the stupidity of Keir Starmer, who has politically murdered the Labour Party. And there is a piece, there is a trailer on the front page about Andrew Neil's GB News. It's about an item on page 47 of the Observer, and it reads, I have been watching Nigel Farage, so you don't have to. Reading again. I have been watching Nigel Farage, so you don't have to. Consider yourself lucky, Catherine Bennett. Now, that applies to some, not the many, that would read Catherine Bennett, either on print or online, about the disaster that is GB News additional disaster. And the disaster that is Nigel Nasty Farage. This Catherine Bennett piece is itself a racist piece. And I shall come to that as part of the diagnosis. This is part A of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel carrying out world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. And here is the piece byline to Catherine Bennett on page 47 of the Guardian Observer. And it, of course, has a picture of the nasty Nigel racist liar hate spieler Farage. Now, she hasn't got anything about racism, what she shouldn't have, because her entire career that I have suffered is full of racist denial. She is not alone. She is typical of the Guardian Observer types. So let's examine what Catherine Bennett says in the print Observer. I'm looking for the contents, dissecting the contents of Catherine Bennett. In the Observer newspaper, which is so what her piece actually is headlined or headed is a lucrative, alluring, completely falsely kind of diversionary piece. Her piece is headed, I have been watching Nigel Farage on GB News, so you don't have to. As I read before, so you don't have to. That is the emphasis that is required by the context of the heading. So there is no mention of racist or racism in her piece. Okay? So Catherine Bennett is apparently giving the readers of The Observer something they should be lucky. They should consider themselves lucky for, because the preceding words read again, I have been watching Nigel Farage on GB News, so you don't have to watch GB News. And then the last sentence, 3 words, consider yourself lucky. That's what she's saying. And in that piece, there is a complete racist assumption, racist denial, and racist outrage, because there is no reference to racism, race. There is no reference at any stage of racism that affects the many, affects the many of the millions of the people who are targets of racism. Remember the word target voters. Okay, we shall go back to the Observer in due course, and here we look at the Sunday crimes. So in the context of the communities campaign, the community that is the Khoodeelaar campaign, defending the community in the East End of London, this is the one that needs mention. The first name is Tim Shipman, who is the political editor at the Sunday Times, and there is an Indian Hindu named Dipesh Gadda, Gadher, Gadda. A grandmother stripped of her British citizenship because she and her daughters were suspected of being members of Islamic State in Syria, has won the way for dozens of jihadists to return to the UK. The woman from the north of England, known only as D4, had her citizenship removed in 2019 for what government sources say were reasons of national security. Government meaning the government of the United Kingdom. She is now in the same camp in northeast Syria as Shamima Begum, the former ISIS child bride. Well, that is an interesting phrase. The former ISIS child bride. Now, what are they referring to as former? Are they referring to former to ISIS as being former, or to Shamima Begum as the child bride being a former child bride? And then it says, the High Court ruled on Friday that it was unlawful for the government to strip D4 of her citizenship because the Home Office had not told her it was doing so. Now, what difference would that make in the context of our knowledge, publicly accessed knowledge so far, of what the Home Office, as fronted by stupid Javid at the time, whom we called Uncle Tom, did? Even if the Home Office would have said to D4 that it was in the process of taking her citizenship away, what realistic options would she have to oppose it? As we know from the travails and the struggle, strictly on the evidence in the context of that particular aspect of Shamima Begum, to even get a hearing where she is present in challenging stupid Javid's removal of her birth, British citizenship by birth. And the Shipman and Gadar piece continues to actually focus on the very crux of the issue now. It reads, the judgment has sent panic through Whitehall, Whitehall being the UK central government departments collectively, referred to as Whitehall after the street in which some of the addresses are based or have been based. The judgment has sent panic through Whitehall because it could lead to dozens of jihadis claiming the right to return to the UK. Now, obviously, this particular paragraph, whoever edited it, is on behalf of the government. It's not on behalf of the victims of the government's illegality. And it is true, the next paragraph condemns the judgment of the High Court, as if this has been written by Priti Patel and Sajid Javid sitting together as the nephew Tom and the niece Tom. One senior official dubbed the ruling nuts, and a second one said, second official meaning the government department, it could be Priti Patel as well. A second said, it will open up the prospect of people judged to be a national security risk being sent back here. Now, when it says judged to be a national security risk, judged by who? Judged on what evidence? What publicly available, testable evidence? The answer is none. The verdict does not dispute that there were grounds to remove citizenship, but says the procedure was unlawfully carried out. Amazing. If the procedure is lawfully carried out, whatever that is, then the outcome, the decision itself, no matter how unlawful that is, how illegal that is okay. That's what they're saying, the Sunday Times. Thus, justifying our calling it Sunday crimes. And then it goes on in the next paragraph. The verdict does not dispute that, the next paragraph after that, the judgment notes, within quotes, the woman is assessed to have traveled to Syria to align with the proscribed terrorist organization Islamic State. Now, proscribed is banned. More than 900 Britons traveled to the Middle East to join ISIS and other jihadist groups, with at least 100 having their citizenship removed. More than 50 British women and children So, continuing the reading, we read again. More than 50 British women and children ISIS brides and cubs are being held in camps in the Middle East. And the language is absolutely stupid. Absolutely stupid and dishonest. Quite apart from the racist removal of the citizenship and all the other implications of the racist infliction of illegality, quite apart from that, and quite apart from the evidence either way of the threat to national security or not, the general situation in relation to international law and international treaty obligations that the UK, within quotation marks, the UK remains obliged to uphold and adhere to, and be seen to uphold and seen to be adhering to. Those are not mentioned in this piece. And if any piece warrants reference to the UK's international treaty obligations, this one does. And yet the Little Englander morons at the Sunday crimes, leaving out the whole world and the treaty obligations that the UK is under and has been under and is due set to be continuing to be undone. In the last paragraph before the Home Office peddling, they mention David Davis. David Davis was one of the contenders for conservative leadership against sleazeball Cameron about 15, 16 years ago. And he is being described here as a Tory cabinet minister. And David Davis is quoted as saying, "This chaotic outcome demonstrates that we need to revisit this policy. So these people are treated with justice, but people liable for crimes are dealt with under British law." Now, what does he mean? How dare David Davis talk about justice? There is no justice in Britain. There is no justice in the British court system, which is absolutely unjust, corrupt, and racist. And there is no accountability for the corruption, the injustice, and the racism that permeates the entirety of the judicial bureaucracies everywhere, at every stage, every tier, every level. And the piece ends with the Home Office spokesperson, whether it's a man or woman, saying, within quotes, "The government will always take the strongest possible action to protect our national security, and the priority remains the safety of our citizens. We are carefully considering the implications of this ruling, including an application to appeal." Now, this is the same kind of procedure that the Home Office followed when Shamima Begum was given the ruling entitling her to be allowed to return to the UK to challenge the Home Office's removal of her citizenship. That was similar to the Friday's ruling by this particular Court of Appeal. That was a Court of Appeal ruling that gave a favorable ruling to help Shamima Begum. And the Home Office appealed to the Supreme Court against the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court formally sat as the Supreme Court, but actually retailed some of the worst and the most racistly stupid pack of lies and insinuations and stupidities and idiocies, and declared that Shamima Begum should not be allowed to return to the UK to challenge the removal of her citizenship by birth. So that's what they're going to do with this one. Because in this one, like in the case of Shamima Begum, there is a lot of racists to be kind of appeased. And the more racists are appeased, the more votes the Conservatives can get from the appeased racists. We shall return to this and elaborate on this later in due course. And we shall update our commentary on the actual fact that it was Keir Starmer who was the real beneficiary of the staged Crown Court trial that took place, that was staged. It wasn't a genuine trial, it was staged at the Snaresbrook Crown Court in the East London borough of Redbridge. Starmer had been saved for the time being from a by-election embarrassment, possible embarrassment, diversion, and a kind of decrease in his kind of claim to be the correct, quote, leader at the expense of the Labour Party. Here is the racist whom we have consistently described as a racist moron and a crook. Nothing to do with his latest racist tweet about the accent of this person, Alex Scott. And the Sunday Times on page 3 has got the piece about her. And here is the piece. There is Jones on that side. That is Jones. That is Jones. So let's have a read of some of it. So Alex Scott says she's proud, and they put the word proud within semi-quotation, of her East London accent. After criticism by Lord Jones, we use it with quotations. We don't accept the word Lord, but anyway. Criticism by Jones that her dropped G's were spoiling the BBC's Olympic coverage. Alex Scott left and below with Claire Boulding said, how she spoke was my journey, my grit. After Jones tweeted she should get elocution lessons. Elocution is the process, is the thing that applies to the way people speak, their pronunciation, their accents. Okay, Scott 36, who is part of the Tokyo 2020 broadcasting team, said she was proud of her working class roots growing up in East London after Lord Jones of Birmingham, a former government minister, suggested she take elocution lessons. Writing on Twitter, Jones 65 said, enough, I can't stand it anymore. Alex Scott spoils a good representational job on the BBC Olympic team with her very noticeable inability to pronounce her G's at the end of the word. Competitors are not taking part, Alex, in the fencing, rowing, boxing, kayaking, weightlifting, and swimming. That is all done, written without the G. He says she was hot on the heels of the Sky presenter Beth Rigby and the Home Secretary Priti Patel, both of whom have been mocked for their accents, adding, for God's sake, can't someone give these people elocution lessons on behalf of the English language help? Scott, a former footballer for England and Arsenal, replied, I'm from a working class family in East London, Poplar, Tower Hamlets, and I'm proud of the young girl who overcame obstacles, and proud of my accent. It's me. It's my journey, my grit. Now, where would anyone be without Poplar in East London? Now, that is something that we find by diagnosing the contents, examining the contents. Now, Alex Jones has not until now mentioned in public, as I have noticed, to my knowledge, anything at all to do with Poplar, East London, whatsoever. Not in the way that it is being carried in this piece in the Sunday Times on page 3 of the Sunday Times of 1st of August 2021. And Scott, who has an Irish mother and Jamaican father, was born in Poplar, East London, and attended Langdon Park Community School. She signed for Arsenal aged 8 and went on to play for England before pursuing a full-time media career. After retiring from sport in 2017, she has repeatedly spoken out about the sexist abuse she receives as a pundit. In 2019, she said she received hateful messages almost every day. Digby Jones, a businessman and politician, was born in Birmingham and educated at Bromsgrove School in Worcestershire, one of the oldest private schools in the country. He worked as a lawyer and was later Director General of the CBI from 2000 to 2006 and Minister of Trade and Industry from 2007 to 2008. He sat in the House of Peers as a crossbench peer until 2020. His comments attracted criticism from linguistic experts and commentators. Piers Morgan, the broadcaster, described Jones's comments as insufferably pompous and patronizing. So you've got the narcissists on board as well. Moron added, that is our word. Moron added, Alex Scott is a working class East London girl who has risen to the top of 2 professions through hard graft and talent. She is winning in life, and with this snobbish attitude, you are losing. And he uses the spelling without the G in solidarity, of course, with the woman Alex Scott. Stephen Fry, the author, actor, and broadcaster, said Jones was everything linguists and true lovers of language despise. Rob Drummond, a reader in social linguistics at Manchester Metropolitan University and head of youth language at the Manchester Centre for Youth Studies, said, dropping G's was a really common feature of lots of accents, especially in London. He said it can be seen as lazy or sloppy speech. It is not. It's just a different accent or language feature. Unfortunately, women, especially women of color, are disproportionately called out on the way they speak compared to other people. Well, it's racist, isn't it? Because Digby Jones, as a crook careerist, Digby Jones was one of the criminals that we actually condemned in 2005, 2006, when he got on board in peddling the cross-rail big business agenda criminals. And we condemned him at the time extensively and regularly. And because of his criminal peddling of the criminals in big business backing the Crossrail Crossrail Crass project, we began to investigate, and I found that Digby Jones was an absolutely shameless self-seeker. It is ironic that the condemnation contained in the Sunday Times today includes another shameless self-seeker who is taking the side of his target, Pierce Moron taking the side of Alex Scott. The negative judgments were compounded if the person was from Essex or East London, while people from Southwest London and the home counties tended to be judged positively. Women were evaluated as being less intelligent but more friendly and trustworthy than men based on the sound of their voice. Yesterday, Jones refused to back away from his comments. He said he said he was disappointed with Scott's response, and that for him it was not about class. He told the Sunday Times, "I come from very modest beginnings in Birmingham. I got a scholarship to a public school. My parents never could have afforded to pay. It's got nothing to do with it. It's about elocution and the fact it is inaccurate." He added, "There will be loads of people to whom it doesn't matter, and that's fine. But there will be loads of people who watch what I said and I say, at last someone is talking about it." Scott's publicist said she did not wish to comment further. Okay, so let's see what the racist Camilla Long has to say on page 19. I'm saying in advance that she is a racist. Let's see if I am correct on this one. Camilla Long is a long-standing racist who has fancied herself in public as the princess that neither Harry nor his brother married. She's got Camilla Long has got the main item on the comment section. And this is about, she is promoting the American woman, Amanda Knox. And the headline, I think, says it all. She says, the heading says, "Stops whining, Digby. You don't know your own title." So she's taking the side of Alex Scott. Okay, so she's saying that do accents matter? If you are the pudding-faced businessman, Lord Digby Jones, I'm quoting her, I'm not using the Lord without quote. The answer apparently is yes. Alex Scott, the Olympics presenter, has displeased him with her very noticeable inability to pronounce her G's at the end of a word. Competitors are not taking part, Alex. He, well, she has got her tense wrong. This piece says he write on Friday. What she meant was he wrote on Friday. That's the tense. In the fencing that I have already read, rowing, boxing, kayaking, weightlifting, and swimming, it is true Scots accent can be grating. Some regional accents are simply more mellifluous than others. What I want to know, though, is why you would ever bother to tweet this. Is there no one this tragic man can turn to on the sofa and get it all out? Instead, he is encouraged. Instead, he is encouraged us, that is the society, the readers, to openly sneer at a young presenter in a way we have somehow never done to fellow pundits Robbie Savage or Ian Wright. As it happens, I think she is brilliant, and I'm loath to take direction from anyone who can't even get his own title right. Okay, what is she talking about? This Digby Jones not getting his title right. Let's have a check. Well, there is no apparent kind of clue as to what she is meaning. We shall investigate further and come back on that particular comment in due course. Okay, so the Alex Scott is a person who was born in Poplar and attended the Poplar-based comprehensive school, Langdon Park School. So, I'm familiar with Langdon Park School as part of a series of campaigns, and I have been familiar with the history of the school as being one of the schools that I had to campaign against because of the head teacher and the regime being racist at the time. The other school, of course, that I had to campaign about changing the administration and the management included the Stepney Green School, where I found myself having to campaign against a number of head teachers. And the first one that I had to campaign against because of racism was in the early 1980s. At that time, the role of the school, Stepney Green School, was predominantly non-Bangladeshi, the white population of the school. And the reason I got involved at that time was because the relations, families, members and relatives of a Bangladeshi origin student approached me for help after he nearly got murdered after being stabbed by a white boy at the school. That was the period 81-83. So the head teacher had to go, and he was replaced by another one who again behaved in a racist way, and I had to campaign against him as well. Now that is part of the struggle, the history of the campaign against racism, direct racist behavior by schools, school management. So the fact that Alex Scott is from the Langdon Park School, or she attended the Langdon Park School, is also significant because one of the Langdon Park School students, Ajmal Ahmad, was murdered by Bangladeshi origin youngsters very near the school building. So it is a contrast. That boy who was murdered had been murdered shortly after he sat the exam, public exam. And the results that came out afterwards showed that he was a brilliant student. And the fact that this person, Alex Scott, went to that school showed the possibilities of making progress and making achievements in academic way and in learning. And it is possible to say, and it can be said, and I'm saying it, that the fact that she has achieved what she has achieved in terms of her own career actually shows the positive side of a place like Poplar, a place like at the school like the Langdon Park School. To what extent the likes of Digby Jones being hostile to her because of her ethnicity, he hasn't been hostile to her because of her accent only. He has been emboldened by the knowledge that she is of mixed race origins. And she looks black, despite the fact that her mother is said to be Irish. And he doesn't like that. I think he would hesitate. Digby Jones, the racist, would have hesitated before posting that intolerant, racist motivated tweet had Alex Scott been of white-only parentage. Well, there is a long piece about Bernie Sanders, age 79, and a friend of Joe Biden. Now here is if racism is bad enough, here is a worse kind of person. And Digby Jones is not the only hate peddlers and idiot being given platforms by the Murdoch Sunday Times. He is denying this. He's saying that animals don't feel pain. Well, that warrants a game whereby some sort of lawfully administered pain should be applied to Rod Liddle, similar to the pain caused by brutes and criminals on innocent animals. People like Rod Liddle, I mean, what do they contribute to the cause of society? We shall be talking more about the likes of Rod Liddle in due course. Okay, there is a rare piece in the Observer about China. The heading is what is interesting. The heading is Sailing Off into Imperial Delusions is nowhere to run foreign policy. Now, imperial delusions is almost the truth, but it's not the whole truth. It should be racist delusions. And it says, what would Jack Aubrey have made of it now? We don't know who Jack Aubrey is so far anyway. When Patrick O'Brien's fictitious Royal Navy hero sailed HMS Surprise to the far side of the world, the enemy was the USS Norfolk, a lone American frigate marauding in the Pacific, full speed ahead from the War of 1812 to 2021. Full speed ahead from the War of 1812, to 2021. And today's maritime sparring partners are HMS Queen Elizabeth, Britain's new 3 billion aircraft carrier, and Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy and its 360 battle force ships. It's hardly an equal fight. Though that would not have stopped Captain Aubrey. In any case, the government insists, slightly disingenuously, that it is not courting confrontation by parading modern-day gunboats under Beijing's nose. The Defense Secretary Ben Wallace says that aim is fly and flag for global Britain. Thus, do deluded Brexiteers spread their foolish neo-imperial fantasies to points as distant as hotly contested South China Sea? Well, this is the deluded and very kind of confused piece itself, because it is being intentionally overly smart. It's not being relevant to the language and the awareness gained from the news about what this is talking about. This whole topic of deploying or exhibiting a British nuclear kind of submarine and ship display in the South China Sea is an alien piece. We shall talk more about that. And before we stop the references to that one, say that that is the language and the narrative used by the Guardian and the Guardian Observer, which is totally in denial of racism, imperialism, and racist criminality ongoing even now, despite the fact that empire has been scrapped or disbanded. Now, this should not be on the front page. Even if they're having a baby, this should not be the front page. And who should be popping up there promoting Carrie Simmons? It's Michael Gove, soon to be divorced Sarah Bennett. And I've got pages and pages of semi-pornographic pictures belonging to Andrew's daughter, Sarah Ferguson's daughter, Eugenie. Now, here is the piece that we discussed in the Sunday Times about Shamima Begum and the ruling in the High Court, Court of Appeal in favor of this woman. And it's a piece that grotesquely has got the name of a person called Abul Taher. Abul Taher appears to be the replacement for the Mail on Sunday for Sue Reed. We shall discuss the replacement later. So the piece is headed New Arm. New arm meaning in terms of prosthetic arm because of loss of the natural arm. New arm and a 500,000 pound council house for the British jihadi bride injured in an Allied air attack. A relative tells the Mail on Sunday that Samia Hussein's high-tech prosthetic limb was funded by the NHS. Definitely. So here is the main display of the piece in the Mail on Sunday. So the Muslim woman, and the idea of this kind of writing is to incite as much hatred against her as it is possible. Well, they're talking about Shamima Begum in that piece, saying although Britain has banned former London schoolgirl Shamima Begum from returning to the UK by stripping her of her citizenship, many others have been quietly allowed to return to the country. Now, our campaign about Shamima Begum so far is focused on the failure, the negligence of the local Tower Hamlets Council to carry out the duty it owed to her under the safeguarding children duty. To Shamima Begum, as well as the other three girls, that all of whom came from the same school and all of whom went to Syria. And our campaign is based on the fact that they were being groomed. These girls were groomed. The first one who left the country, left London in December 2014, was later the other three girls who were first reportedly pictured at an airport as going to Syria in February. The publication was in February 2015, which was only a few months after the first one went in December 2014. And when they went into Syria, wherever in Syria they actually went, it was later reported that they met with the first one. So there was a link, there was a connection. And other statements made recently by Shamima Begum included the statement, as published, that she only went to Syria, or she mainly went to Syria, because she was missing her friend. However, kind of confusing and difficult to understand that is, but what all of these amount to is that these four girls were neglected. They were left to their devices. And nobody in Tower Hamlets Council showed any interest in safeguarding them. And as the publication exists in the Wikipedia, that the first one, was actually groomed from the actual building, East London Mosque in Whitechapel Road. Now, East London Mosque is the place which is controlled by the same people who had backed the imposition of the elected mayor post, and they had publicly been reported as having already decided early in 2010 to foist Lutfur Rahman as the first elected mayor at the expense of Tower Hamlets. Now, which they did. So Lutfur Rahman, conceivably, taking into account all the evidence of all his connections, would have been aware of the role being played by the East London Mosque controllers, or the people who had inside control and access to the East London Mosque. And as the Wikipedia entry says, the first one that went to Syria was groomed by two women belonging to what is described as a two-word kind of description: Sisters Forum. It is further explained in the published entry on the East London Mosque and on the first girl, that the reference to Sisters Forum is a reference to the Islamic Forum Europe. Now, the Islamic Forum Europe had only very recently been renamed because of the published notoriety attaching to it. They have changed it to something else. But essentially, it's the same people. So we shall be looking at Shamima Begum in light of the item in the Mail on Sunday and the item in the Sunday Times, and we shall look for further factual aspects for updating on our campaign and demand that Taranet's Council must deliver belated, but must deliver its safeguarding duties owed to Shamima Begum and the other three girls. That will be continued. So we are now ending this part A, at 9:29 GMT and 10:29 hours UK time on Sunday, the 1st of August 2021.